The amateur, the hopeful gambler, comes to Wall Street with his mind consumed by a single intoxicating and ultimately ruinous question. How much money can I make? He is a hunter of gains, a dreamer of fortunes, and he is, by this very mindset, destined for the slaughterhouse. The professional speculator, the man who has survived the unforgiving crucible of the market long enough to learn its great and immutable laws, begins from the polar opposite. His first, his last, and his most obsessive thought is not on the potential reward, but on the ever-present and ever-threatening reality of risk. His primary question is always, how much money can I afford to lose? This is the great fundamental dividing line that separates the man who is built to endure from the man who is destined to be wiped out. The amateur is an optimist, a creature of hope. The professional is a realist, a strategist whose primary and most sacred duty is the relentless and disciplined preservation of his capital. For he knows a simple and profound truth. A speculator without capital is like a general without an army. He is no longer in the game. His opinions, no matter how brilliant, are worthless. His past victories are but memories. Capital is the lifeblood of speculation, the ammunition in the long war against the market's uncertainty. To understand the operational philosophy of a master like Jesse Livermore is to understand that every single rule, every tactic, and every principle he ever espoused was built upon this one single foundational bedrock, the preservation of capital above all else. This was not merely a rule, it was his religion. This entire system of risk management, forged through a lifetime of both spectacular victories and soul-crushing defeats, is a science. It is a set of definite, logical, and inviolable laws for engaging with an inherently uncertain future. It is the speculator's only true shield against his own human fallibility. The principles that form this shield were documented with unparalleled clarity and insight by Edwin Lefebvre in the definitive chronicle of a master speculator's mind. A link to his essential work, Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, now with a unique, detailed chapter-by-chapter analysis from Max Davidson, is left in the description below this video. This new analysis is specially designed to make the timeless wisdom of the book powerfully relevant to the modern reader. With that, let us begin the clinical dissection of the 12 great principles of risk management that formed the core of the Livermore method. First, preserve capital above all else. This is the Prime Directive, the great law from which all other laws are derived. It is the alpha and the omega of the speculator's creed. The first goal is not to grow rich, but to survive. The first victory is not a great profit, but the simple act of being able to come back and play the game the next day. The speculator's capital is his inventory, just as a storekeeper has shelves of goods. He would not allow a thief to walk in and steal his inventory. Why then would he allow the market, through his own carelessness or emotionalism, to steal his precious capital? The man who does not make capital preservation his highest priority is not a speculator. He is a gambler, a thrill-seeker on a short and certain path to financial oblivion. He treats the market like a casino going for broke on a single hopeful bet. The professional treats speculation as a serious business, and the first rule of any business is to stay in business. This means protecting one's working capital with the ferocity of a mother protecting her young. Every decision, every trade, every thought must first pass through this one simple filter. Does this action increase or decrease the risk to my primary capital base? If the risk is too great, if the conditions are unclear, if the odds are not heavily in his favor, the professional simply does nothing. He understands that the market will always be there tomorrow, teeming with new opportunities. His job is to ensure that he is still there to take advantage of them. This requires a defensive mindset, a profound respect for the market's power to inflict ruin. The amateur is always on the offense, always trying to score. The professional spends 90% of his time on defense, on studying the field, on managing his risk, so that when he finally does choose to go on the offense, his attack is decisive, powerful, and made from a position of unshakable strength. Capital preservation is not a timid strategy. It is the ultimate expression of speculative courage. It is the courage to be patient, the courage to do nothing, and the courage to admit when one is wrong. It is the foundation of a long and prosperous career. Second, cut losses quickly. This is the primary practical application of the Prime Directive. If the first rule is to preserve capital, then the first action must be the swift and merciless cutting of a loss. A loss is a cancer upon a speculator's account, and the only sane response to a cancer is to cut it out before it can spread. The tape is the final arbiter of truth. A loss is not an opinion. It is a fact. It is the market's own clear, cold, and impersonal verdict that the speculator's initial judgment was wrong. The professional speculator does not argue with the verdict of the tape. He obeys it instantly and without question. The amateur, by contrast, is an expert at arguing with the tape. When a trade goes against him, he does not see it as a signal to exit, but as an invitation to hope. He tells himself it is a temporary reaction, a shakeout of the weak hands. He is a man whispering comforting lies to himself as his house burns down around him. A small loss, when taken quickly, is a minor and insignificant event. It is a normal business expense, a small insurance premium paid to the market for the privilege of testing a speculative idea. It is a flesh wound that heals overnight. But a small loss, when it is not cut, is allowed to fester. It grows, day by day, into a large, debilitating, and ultimately catastrophic loss. It becomes a heavy chain, shackling the speculator to his past mistake and clouding his judgment for all future decisions. The speculator must learn to take a small loss with a sense of professional pride. It is not an admission of failure as a man, it is a demonstration of his success as a disciplined operator. It is the proof that he is following his rules. The human ego is the great enemy of the stop-loss. The ego hates to be wrong. The act of selling for a loss is a concrete admission of error, a painful blow to one's pride. The amateur would rather risk a great deal of his money than a small bruise to his ego. The professional has learned through painful experience that his ego is a luxury he cannot afford. He has subordinated his pride to the simple, profitable mathematics of risk management. He knows that his job is not to be right all the time, but to make a great deal of money when he is right. And this is only possible if he loses very little when he is wrong. Third, never average down a losing position. This is the speculator's mortal sin. It is the most perverse, the most illogical, and the most destructive of all trading mistakes. It is the act of not only failing to cut a loss, but of actively and deliberately reinforcing a proven failure. The amateur, trapped in a losing position by his ego and his hope, sees the declining price not as a warning but as an opportunity. He tells himself, the stock was a bargain at 50, so it must be an even better bargain at 40. He buys more, averaging down his cost. He believes he's being a shrewd investor. In reality, he is a fool, doubling down on an error in judgment. He is throwing good money after bad, sending his precious reserves into a battle that is already being lost. The professional operates on the exact polar opposite principle. He never reinforces failure. He reinforces success. He never averages down a loss. He pyramids a profit. To average a loss is to commit more capital to a position that the market itself has already told you is wrong. It is a direct and defiant argument with the ticker tape. It is an act of supreme and costly arrogance. The stock is not cheaper at 40. It is weaker. It has, by its own action, proven that the line of least resistance is downwards. To buy more of it is to attempt to catch a falling knife. This mistake is born of the desperate desire to get out even. The trader, by lowering his average cost, believes he is making it easier for the stock to rally back to his break-even point. He does not realize he is only digging his financial grave deeper. The ironclad rule must be this: never, under any circumstances, buy more of a stock that is showing you a loss. A losing position should only ever be closed. It should never be increased. To do otherwise is to violate the most fundamental principle of capital preservation. It is the act of a man who, finding himself in a hole, decides that the only solution is to keep digging. Fourth, let profits run. This is the great positive corollary to the defensive rule of cutting losses. The speculator who has mastered the art of cutting his losses has solved the problem of survival. But to move from mere survival to great fortune, he must master the second and equally difficult art, the art of letting his winners run. The same emotional demons that cause the amateur to hold his losers cause him to sell his winners too soon. He enters a trade correctly, and it shows him a quick and handsome profit. Immediately, he is seized by the emotion of fear, the fear of seeing that paper profit disappear. He is tormented by the thought of a normal reaction wiping out his gain. He tells himself the most dangerous and seductive of all market platitudes: you can't go broke taking a profit. And so he sells, snatching his small, nervous gain. While it is true that one cannot go broke taking a profit, it is the philosophy that guarantees a man will never grow rich. His career becomes a series of small, timid wins that are inevitably and mathematically wiped out by the one or two large, undisciplined losses that he was too hopeful to cut. Livermore stated with absolute clarity that it was never his thinking that made the big money for him. It was his sitting. It was the courage and the character to hold a winning position, day after day, week after week, as long as the stock and the market were acting right. The great profits are not made in the initial breakout. They are made in the great, quiet, and often nerve-wracking middle of the big swing. To sell a stock that is in a powerful, confirmed uptrend is to abandon a victorious campaign long before the final victory has been achieved. The speculator must have the patience to sit with a winner, to endure the normal, healthy pullbacks, and to give the trend the time it needs to fully mature. This is the hardest work in speculation. It is a battle against the powerful, primal instinct to secure a small gain out of fear. The man who has mastered this art is the man who can turn a 10-point gain into a 100-point gain. He is the one who captures the great life-altering moves that the market offers only a few times a year. He is a farmer who has the patience to let his crop grow to its full and magnificent harvest. Fifth, never overtrade. This is a rule against the gambler's itch for constant action. The amateur feels that to be out of the market is to be missing an opportunity. He cannot stand the quiet of being in cash. He feels a compulsive need to always have a position on, to always be in the game. This is a fatal psychological flaw, and it leads to the destructive habit of overtrading. He begins to trade on the minor, meaningless fluctuations of the market. He is not speculating on the great primary trends. He is gambling on the random day-to-day noise. The costs of this habit are twofold. The first is financial. He is constantly being whipsawed, buying at the top of a small wiggle and selling at the bottom. His account is steadily bled dry by 1,000 small losses and the constant corrosive drip of commissions. The second cost is mental. The man who is always in the market is a man whose mind is never clear. He is in a constant state of emotional turmoil, his judgment clouded by the stress and the anxiety of his last losing trade. He loses his perspective. Livermore knew that the most profitable position in the market is often no position at all. There are long periods when the market has no clear, definite trend. To trade during these times of confusion is to be a fool. The professional speculator conserves not only his financial capital, but also his precious mental and emotional capital. He knows that his judgment is his greatest asset, and he refuses to squander it on low-probability, marginal trades. He has the discipline to wait patiently for the perfect setup, for the moment when all the factors align and the market itself gives a clear and unmistakable signal. He knows that such moments are rare. He is paid not for his action, but for his correct judgment. And a massive part of that correct judgment is knowing when to do nothing at all. To avoid overtrading is to avoid the market's most common and costly traps. Sixth, risk only a small fraction of capital per trade. This is the final mathematical bedrock of the entire risk management system. It is the rule that ties all the others together. It is the science of position sizing. The amateur, when he feels a surge of conviction about a particular trade, is often tempted to bet the farm. He will risk a large and reckless portion of his total capital, 10, 20, even 50% on a single idea. He is acting like a man who is playing Russian roulette with his own career. Even if his judgment is correct, 9 times out of 10, the one time he is wrong will be enough to wipe him out completely and permanently. The professional speculator, no matter how confident he is in a particular trade, will never, under any circumstances, risk a large fraction of his total capital on a single venture. His position sizing is a matter of cold, hard, and conservative arithmetic. The 10% stop-loss rule is the first layer of this, but the true formula goes deeper. The potential loss from that 10% stop-loss must, in itself, represent only a very small and almost insignificant fraction of the speculator's total capital base. A sound rule is to never risk more than 1 or 2% of one's total fortune on a single speculative idea. This is the mathematical guarantee of survival. A speculator who follows this rule can be wrong 10 times in a row and still only have lost 10 or 20% of his capital. He is still in the game. He is still a factor. The amateur who was wrong just once on his big, reckless bet is out of the business forever. This rule is the source of true speculative courage. A man who knows that the maximum possible loss from any single trade is a small and manageable amount is a man who can trade without fear. His mind is free from the paralyzing anxiety that comes from having too much on the line. He can make clear, objective decisions based on the evidence of the tape, not on a desperate need to protect himself from a ruinous loss. It is in these moments of calculating risk and managing exposure that the true work of a speculator is done. The emotional desire to bet big is a powerful enemy. It is for this reason that a constant return to these first principles is essential. A return to this channel, to this video and others, especially after a series of painful losses has clouded one's judgment, serves as a vital recalibration of the professional mindset. The science of position sizing is the final and most important element of a sound defensive strategy. The man who masters it has made it mathematically impossible for the market to ever deliver a fatal blow. He has guaranteed his own survival, which is the first and most important victory in the great game. 7th, wait for clear market signals. The great game of speculation is not a game of action, but a game of reaction. The amateur, driven by his impatience and his greed, is always trying to make something happen. He seeks to impose his will upon the market. The professional knows this is a fool's errand. He waits, with the calm vigilance of a master, for the market itself to give the signal. A speculator is not paid to be a fortune teller. He is not paid to anticipate, to guess, or to hope what a stock will do. He is paid to correctly diagnose the present fact of the market's action and to act upon it with intelligence and dispatch. To act before the market has spoken is to be a gambler, betting on a blind turn of a card. The clear market signal, the one that justifies the risk of one's capital, is the breakout at a pivotal point. This is the moment when a stock, after a period of consolidation, decisively announces its intention to begin a new and powerful move. This is the moment when the line of least resistance becomes clear and unmistakable. This signal must have a definite character. It must be a move of authority, a breakout with power and force, and it must, without exception, be accompanied by a dramatic and significant increase in the volume of trading. This is the market's own confirmation that the move is genuine and is being sponsored by the smart money. To buy before this pivotal point is to act on hope. To buy after this pivotal point has been confirmed by the tape is to act on evidence. The entire science of speculation can be reduced to this simple distinction. The professional waits for the evidence. He may have to wait for days, for weeks, or even for months. It does not matter. He has the discipline to sit with his capital and his peace of mind intact until the one single high-probability moment presents itself. The market is not a continuous performance. It is a series of rare and valuable opportunities. The speculator's job is to be ready for them. To act without a clear signal from the tape is to be a sucker, providing your capital for the benefit of those who are patient enough to wait for the proper time. Eighth, cash is a position. The amateur speculator believes that to be in the market is to be a speculator, and to be out of the market is to be a failure. He feels a constant nervous itch to be invested, to have a position on. To be in cash to him feels like an admission of defeat, a missed opportunity. This is a profound and costly psychological error. The master speculator understands a truth that is invisible to the novice. The cash position is often the most strategic, the most powerful, and the most profitable position of all. To be in cash is not to be out of the game. It is to be a king in reserve, waiting for the decisive moment to enter the battle. The man who is in cash possesses an asset of incalculable value, a clear and objective mind. He is not emotionally entangled in any particular stock. He is not being whipsawed by the market's minor fluctuations. He is not suffering from the mental exhaustion that comes from a series of small, frustrating losses. He can sit and observe the market with the cool detachment of a scientist. He can see the great primary trends forming without the distorting lens of his own hopes and fears. His judgment is sound. His mind is at peace. The man who is always in the market, by contrast, loses his perspective. His judgment becomes clouded by his last trade. He is either overconfident from a small win or fearful from a small loss. He cannot see the forest for the trees. There are long periods in the market when the conditions are not clear, when the tape is telling a story of confusion and indecision. These are the treacherous sideways markets. The professional speculator knows that to trade in such a market is to engage in a low-probability gamble. His response is simple. He does nothing. He sells his positions, converts his assets to cash, and he waits. He preserves his capital, and more importantly, he preserves his mental and emotional energy. He knows that his job during these times is to study the market, not to trade it. To be in cash is to be the master of your own destiny. You are not at the mercy of a sudden overnight news event. You are not a prisoner of your own positions. You are a free agent with your capital intact, ready to strike with overwhelming force when the one true and unmistakable opportunity finally presents itself. Ninth, never trust tips or other people's opinions. The speculator who would succeed must learn to stand alone. He must be a lone wolf, doing his own thinking, forming his own conclusions, and acting upon his own judgment. The moment he allows the opinion of another man to influence his decisions is the moment he has surrendered his own mind, and his capital is sure to follow. The world of Wall Street is a vast and noisy echo chamber of tips, of rumors, of so-called inside information. This is the bait for the sucker. The amateur, in his intellectual laziness and his desire for a shortcut to easy money, is an insatiable consumer of these tips. He does not stop to ask the most logical of all questions. If this information is so valuable, why is it being given to me? He does not see that a genuine tip is the rarest thing in the world, and that the vast majority of what he hears is either a guess, a hope, or a deliberate piece of manipulative propaganda. To act on a tip is to make a trade for which you do not understand the premise. You do not know the real reason for buying, and therefore you will never know the real reason for selling. You are a blind man being led by another, and both are destined for the ditch. Livermore learned this lesson in the most brutal way possible, in the great cotton debacle where he lost a fortune by subordinating his own judgment to that of the expert Percy Thomas. He had seen the sell signal on the tape. His own proven method was screaming at him to get out, but he listened to the persuasive, hopeful words of another man. It was a mistake that cost him everything. From that day forward, the rule was absolute. He did his own work. He studied his own charts. He read his own tape. His mind was a locked room, and the opinions of other men were not granted entry. The speculator must learn that no man can make a great fortune by having another man tell him what to do. The thinking must be his own. The decisions must be his own. And the responsibility for both the profits and the losses must be his own. 10th, patience is protection. The virtue of patience is not, as the amateur believes, a passive quality. It is an active and powerful form of defense. It is the speculator's primary shield against the two things that are most certain to destroy him: his own emotional impulses and the market's many deceptions. Patience is the discipline to wait, motionless for the one true high-probability setup. It is the refusal to be lured into the market by the siren song of small, meaningless fluctuations. It is the wisdom to know that the money is made not in the trading, but in the waiting. Patience is the protection against the whipsaw of a sideways market. The impatient trader is chopped to pieces, his capital bled dry by 1,000 small cuts. The patient trader stands aside in cash, his capital preserved, and waits for the trend to declare itself. Patience is the protection against chasing a stock that has already had a great and powerful advance. The impatient trader, driven by a fear of missing out, will rush in at the top, just as the smart money is beginning to sell. The patient trader will let the stock go, knowing that to buy late is to buy wrong. He understands a simple truth. The market is a continuous parade of opportunities. To miss one is of no consequence, for another will soon come along. There is no need to be in every move. There is only a need to be in the right moves. Patience is also the courage to sit tight with a winning position. It is the discipline to not be shaken out by the normal, healthy reactions that are a part of every great trend. It is the fortitude to let a profit run, to allow a 10-point gain to become a 100-point gain. The speculator in the end is paid for his patience. He is paid for his patience in waiting for the correct entry. And he is paid for his patience in waiting for the correct exit. Every other action in between is a potential source of loss. 11th, the market is always right. A speculator is a man who deals in opinions. He forms an opinion based on his study about the future direction of a stock or the market. But he must never, for a single moment, forget this one supreme and humbling truth. His opinion is worthless until it is confirmed by the market itself. The ticker tape is the final arbiter. It is the Supreme Court. Its verdict is the only one that matters. The speculator who begins to believe that his own opinion is more important than the market's action is a speculator who is on the verge of a great and devastating ruin. This is the very essence of the ego trap. The amateur, when a trade goes against him, is often heard to say, "The market is wrong. This stock should be going up." This is a statement of profound and dangerous insanity. The market can never be wrong. It is the sum of all forces, all knowledge, and all opinions. It simply is. The speculator's opinion, on the other hand, can be, and very often is, wrong. The entire business of risk management is built upon this simple acknowledgement of one's own fallibility. The stop-loss is the practical mechanism for enforcing this principle. It is the pre-committed decision to accept the market's verdict without argument. When a stock moves against a speculator and hits his stop, the market is saying, "Your opinion is wrong." The speculator's only sane response is to say, "I accept your verdict," and to close the position. To argue with the tape, to hold a losing position in the face of the market's contrary evidence, is the act of a man whose pride has become more important to him than his capital. And the market has a way of taking both from such a man. 12th, control emotions. This is the final and the all-encompassing law. It is the one principle that makes all the other 11 possible. The speculator who has not first learned to control himself can never hope to control his account. The great battle is not fought on the exchange. It is fought within the mind. The market is a machine that is designed to exploit the most powerful and primitive of human emotions. It tempts a man with greed. It paralyzes him with fear. It deludes him with hope. It inflames him with ego. These are the great enemies of the speculator. The entire set of rules and principles that Livermore developed was, in the final analysis, a system for the management and control of these emotions. It was a scientific fortress, built to protect his rational, analytical mind from the destructive chaos of his own human nature. The stop-loss is a rule against hope. The practice of patience is a rule against greed and impatience. The principle of following the trend is a rule against ego. Each rule is a specific and targeted defense against a specific emotional weakness. The speculator who would succeed must become a cold and detached operator. He must learn to view the market not as an exciting casino or a personal antagonist, but as a series of impersonal mathematical problems to be solved. He must achieve a state of mind where he can take a loss without flinching and a great profit without gloating. He must be a scientist, an observer of facts, not a participant in a great emotional drama. This is the hardest work of all. It is a lifelong and never-ending battle against the powerful currents of one's own inner world. But it is the one battle that must be won. For the speculator who has achieved a state of perfect emotional control is a speculator who has at last become invincible.